The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the courthouse, casting long golden stripes across the polished wooden floors. The courthouse, a blend of old brick architecture and modern glass doors, was already bustling with people, lawyers hurrying with papers, clerks arranging files, and families waiting nervously in rows of hard benches. Among the ordinary visitors that day walked 3-year-old Lily, her tiny hand enveloped by her mother. Lily's wide eyes darted from one detail to the next, the towering columns that seemed to touch the ceiling, the intricate molding along the walls, and the faint smell of polished wood mixed with the faint scent of coffee drifting from the small cafe near the entrance. To most, the courthouse was a place of serious business and tense whispers, but to Lily, it was an enormous playground of curiosity, each corner brimming with stories waiting to unfold. Her mother, Sarah, held her close, mindful of the bustling crowd but also aware that Lily's gaze was drawn elsewhere, distracted by every unusual sight. "Stay close, sweetie," she said softly, lowering her voice so as not to disturb the murmurs echoing around them. Lily nodded but barely noticed, her attention already caught by something remarkable. A large, dark-coated German shepherd sitting alertly near the front of the courtroom, beside a uniformed officer who moved with practiced precision. The dog's posture was disciplined, every muscle taut but calm, eyes scanning the room with a trained focus. This was Rex, one of the local police department's most respected K-9 officers, known for his skill in detecting narcotics and assisting in security operations. He had been trained for years, and anyone who saw him understood that beneath that calm exterior was a machine of instinct and intelligence, ready to react in an instant. But to Lily, Rex was different. He wasn't an officer, he wasn't a tool of law enforcement. He was a companion, a gentle giant waiting to be noticed. Her small fingers twitched in excitement, and a soft smile formed on her face as she whispered under her breath, "Hello, doggy." It was a quiet greeting, but somehow it carried more courage than the loudest courtroom arguments. Sarah noticed and felt a twinge of anxiety, unsure how the handler might react. Yet in Lily's eyes was a spark of fearlessness that Sarah had seen many times before, an innocent bravery that made her daughter approach new things with pure curiosity rather than caution. The courtroom itself was a mix of tension and routine. The judge, a stern figure named Judge Thompson, sat at the elevated bench reviewing documents, adjusting his glasses occasionally, unaware that the day would soon diverge from ordinary proceedings. Attorneys murmured quietly as they organized their notes, preparing for the next case on the docket. Families shifted in the benches, some anxious, others whispering among themselves. Security officers patrolled silently, while the air carried the faint hum of distant conversations. In the midst of all this, Lily and her mother quietly entered, holding hands like two tiny anchors in a sea of solemnity. As they walked closer to the courtroom proper, Lily's eyes never left Rex. The dog's handler, Officer Daniels, noticed her approach and instinctively tightened his grip on the leash. Rex, though calm, was alert to every movement, a sentinel conditioned to protect and respond. Officer Daniels had worked with Rex for 5 years and had seen many attempts by curious children to interact with the dog. Most were met with strict caution or gentle redirection. But Lily was different. There was no fear in her eyes, no hesitation. She approached with the slow, measured curiosity of someone who saw the world in pure shapes and possibilities, not dangers and rules. The whispers began quietly at first. Some spectators leaned toward one another, curious about the small child walking toward the formidable K-9. Lawyers paused mid-step, papers in hand, exchanging subtle glances. Judges rarely interrupted court proceedings, but even they noticed the unusual attention gathering at the corner of the room. It wasn't often that a toddler captured the focus of a courtroom filled with adults engaged in matters of law and procedure. And yet, Lily's innocence seemed to act like a magnet, drawing attention without demanding it. Every eye, eventually, turned toward her and Rex. The first few steps were tentative. Lily crouched slightly, bringing herself closer to Rex's level. Her small fingers extended toward the dog, trembling slightly, not out of fear but anticipation. "Hi, doggy," she said in a soft, melodic voice, barely louder than a whisper. It was a simple greeting, but in that moment it carried weight, reverence, and a natural authority that surprised even Officer Daniels. Rex's ears twitched, and his keen nose detected the warmth and sincerity of her presence. Instead of reacting defensively, the dog leaned slightly forward, tail swishing gently, demonstrating the first sign of recognition. The contrast was remarkable. A trained police K9, disciplined for years, responding calmly to a tiny human who spoke not commands but words of friendship. Sarah, Lily's mother, couldn't help but hold her breath. "Sweetie, be gentle," she whispered, but she also watched in awe, realizing that her daughter's innocence was creating a rare moment, a pause in the rigid rhythm of the courthouse. It was as if the walls themselves softened, the echoes of footsteps and murmurs fading into a quiet space where a child and a dog shared an unspoken understanding. Spectators began to murmur, whispering quietly among themselves about the extraordinary scene. A few even pulled out their phones, capturing a moment that they instinctively knew would become memorable, even if they didn't yet understand why. The judge, noticing the unusual distraction, leaned back slightly in his chair, adjusting his glasses. His eyes followed Lily's interaction with Rex, and a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. This was not the first extraordinary thing he had witnessed in his courtroom, but rarely did it happen with such purity and simplicity. Even the attorneys, caught mid-discussion, paused and observed, recognizing the delicate magic of the moment. It was as if, for a few brief minutes, the formalities of law, the stress of cases, and the weight of adult responsibilities had been suspended, replaced by something far more profound: the gentle connection between a child and a dog. Officer Daniels, ever vigilant, slowly relaxed his grip on the leash. Rex, trained to follow commands and respond to threats, had chosen, in that instant, to respond to the quiet authority of innocence rather than any formal instruction. He moved closer to Lily, sniffing her small hand gently, acknowledging her presence without hesitation. The reaction was subtle yet powerful, signaling to everyone present that something extraordinary was unfolding. This was no ordinary interaction between a child and a dog. It was a meeting of trust, courage, and innate understanding that defied conventional expectations. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted completely. Murmurs grew into quiet exclamations of amazement, some spectators holding back tears at the beauty of the scene. Lily's small smile widened as she gently patted Rex's head, her tiny fingers grazing his soft fur. For her, it was play, curiosity, and connection. For the adults, it was a lesson in humility, kindness, and the unexpected ways that innocence could touch even the most disciplined of beings. The day, which had begun like any other, had transformed into something extraordinary, a memory that would linger far beyond the courtroom walls, carried in the hearts of everyone fortunate enough to witness it. The courthouse was unusually quiet for a moment, as if the building itself were holding its breath, observing the tiny human who dared approach one of the most disciplined animals in the city. Lily's eyes were wide with wonder, reflecting the sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Her mother, Sarah, stayed close, unsure whether to guide her daughter or simply let her curiosity unfold. Lily's gaze remained locked on Rex, the German shepherd, whose sleek black and tan coat shimmered under the light. To most people, Rex was a symbol of authority, trained to respond to threats and commands without hesitation. To Lily, however, he was a companion, a friend waiting to be acknowledged. As Lily stepped closer, the handler, Officer Daniels, tensed slightly. He had trained Rex for years, teaching him to respond instantly to the faintest command. Rex could detect scents, identify threats, and even disarm potentially dangerous situations. But this was something different. The dog's keen instincts had never encountered a human quite like Lily. She moved slowly, deliberately, with no fear in her heart, and her voice carried an innocence that Rex seemed to recognize immediately. Her tiny fingers reached out and she whispered softly, "Hi, doggy, do you want to play?" Rex tilted his head, ears perking as he sniffed the air around Lily. The room, which had been tense with legal proceedings, seemed to pause. Lawyers and court staff glanced at one another in disbelief. It was rare, almost unheard of, for a professional K-9 to remain so calm in such a bustling, formal environment. Yet Rex did not growl, bark, or retreat. Instead, he leaned slightly toward the child, his tail swishing gently, a subtle acknowledgement of her presence. The courtroom, usually filled with hushed murmurs about cases and legal arguments, now focused entirely on a 3-year-old and a dog. "Mommy, look," Lily said excitedly, crouching down slightly to bring herself to Rex's level. "You're so big and strong." Her words were simple, yet they carried the pure fascination of a child discovering something extraordinary for the first time. Sarah couldn't help but smile nervously, unsure whether to intervene or let her daughter experience this moment. She decided to step back, realizing that Lily's instinctive kindness was guiding her actions. Sometimes, she thought, children understood things adults could not, the quiet language of trust and empathy. Officer Daniels observed silently, his professional instincts battling with an unexpected admiration. He had worked with Rex through countless scenarios, drug raids, search and rescue missions, and tense public demonstrations. But never had he witnessed the effect a human could have on Rex without commands, treats, or training. Lily's presence seemed to bypass the barriers of discipline, reaching straight into the dog's instincts. Every eye in the courtroom followed the unfolding scene with growing fascination. Spectators whispered softly, some exchanging glances of disbelief, while others captured the moment on their phones, knowing instinctively that this was a story worth remembering. Lily's approach was deliberate yet gentle. She extended a tiny hand toward Rex, her fingers trembling slightly with excitement. "Can I touch you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, filled with curiosity and kindness. Rex leaned forward slowly, sniffing her hand as if evaluating her intentions. His tail wagged just a little, a sign that even a highly trained police dog could respond to sincerity over command. The handler, though vigilant, allowed the interaction to continue, recognizing the rare connection forming between child and dog. The courtroom seemed suspended in time, all attention centered on this delicate meeting. The judge, Judge Thompson, adjusted his glasses and watched closely. Normally, his attention was fixed on legal documents or proceedings, yet today he found himself captivated by the unusual interaction. The seriousness of the courtroom, the strict rules and formalities, faded for a moment, replaced by wonder. Even the lawyers paused their preparation, quietly observing the small child as she navigated a space that few would dare to approach a K-9 in. The whispers grew. Some people speculated on whether the dog had been trained to sense kindness, while others simply marveled at the innocence of a 3-year-old commanding attention without effort. Lily's confidence grew with every step. She leaned slightly closer and said softly, "It's okay, you don't have to be scared." Her words were simple, yet they resonated deeply, not just with Rex, but with everyone witnessing the moment. The dog shifted slightly, lowering his head to her level, his eyes softening as he studied her small, bright face. The effect was instantaneous. Tension melted from the room, replaced by a quiet awe. Spectators exchanged smiles, some teary-eyed, recognizing the rare, almost magical bond unfolding. Sarah watched her daughter's fearless innocence and felt a surge of pride and astonishment. She whispered under her breath, "You're amazing, Lily," though the words were directed more at the scene itself than at her child. Officer Daniels knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to the pair, ready to intervene if necessary. Yet Rex remained calm, responding not to commands but to trust. For a dog trained to react in seconds, Lily's presence was a signal that no threat existed, only friendship. The atmosphere shifted subtly but noticeably. Murmurs became quiet exclamations of admiration, and a few attendees discreetly reached for their phones to capture the moment. The courtroom had seen many important and tense events, yet nothing prepared them for the sheer purity of what was happening before their eyes. A 3-year-old had captivated everyone, not with eloquence, arguments, or formal presentation, but with courage, empathy, and the unspoken understanding that kindness could reach even the most disciplined beings. Lily's final approach in that first encounter was tentative, yet filled with purpose. She crouched slightly and extended both hands toward Rex, her tiny fingers brushing the soft fur of his muzzle. "You're a good doggy," she said softly, her words full of genuine admiration. Rex responded by nudging her hand gently with his nose, a simple act that carried profound significance. It was a gesture of acceptance, a quiet acknowledgement that trust had been established. In that brief moment, the entire courtroom felt the weight of an extraordinary encounter. The innocence of a child meeting the discipline of a police dog and bridging the gap effortlessly. By the time Lily straightened, Rex had shifted his attention fully toward her, calm yet engaged, ready to interact without hesitation. Officer Daniels, now smiling, allowed the leash a little slack, marveling at the effect a tiny human could have on a trained K9. The judge observed quietly, a rare warmth in his expression, as lawyers and spectators whispered about the remarkable scene. It was clear that what had begun as a simple courthouse visit had transformed into a story of innocence, courage, and trust, an encounter that would linger in memory long after the day ended. Even as the courtroom slowly returned to the rhythm of legal proceedings, the energy had shifted. Lily had introduced something unexpected into the space, a moment of pure connection that transcended authority, rules, and protocol. The entire room, from the judge to the last bench of attendees, was subtly changed, united in silent admiration for a small child whose curiosity and bravery had created an extraordinary bond with a professional police dog. It was the kind of story that would be told for years, remembered not for legal victories but for the awe-inspiring beauty of innocence meeting discipline. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as Lily crouched slightly, bringing herself closer to Rex. Her small fingers trembled not from fear but from excitement. She gazed into the dog's dark, intelligent eyes, sensing the calm strength behind them. "Do you like me?" she asked softly, a whisper meant only for him, but carried with a sincerity that resonated through the space. It was an innocent question, one that would have been impossible for adults to ask with such clarity, yet it struck a chord with everyone present. Rex's ears twitched as he studied her, his keen senses attuned not just to sound but to emotion. The crowd watched in awe, expecting perhaps a bark or a stiff retreat. Instead, the dog leaned slightly forward, tail wagging gently, a subtle but profound acknowledgement of Lily's presence. Officer Daniels, who had trained him for years, looked on in amazement. He had taught Rex to respond instantly to commands, to assess threats, and to act decisively, but no training had prepared him for this. Lily's pure intention, her fearless innocence, bypassed all protocols and touched the dog in a way words could not describe. Spectators exchanged glances of disbelief. Some whispered quietly to their neighbors, others sat with wide-eyed wonder. Lawyers paused, pens in hand, momentarily distracted from the case at hand. Even the judge, normally an embodiment of stoic authority, leaned slightly forward, watching the small child and the powerful dog interact. The tension that usually filled the room, cases, arguments, disputes, dissolved into a palpable sense of awe. A tiny human had, in the span of a few moments, managed to capture the attention of a disciplined K9, a room full of adults, and perhaps even the spirit of the courthouse itself. "Mommy, he likes me," Lily exclaimed softly, her eyes lighting up with triumph. She reached out further, brushing her hand against Rex's soft fur. The dog responded by nudging her hand gently with his nose, a simple gesture that carried immense weight. Officer Daniels smiled, lowering his hand slightly from the leash, trusting the child's instincts and the bond that was forming. It was rare, almost unheard of, to witness such a connection between a toddler and a trained police dog, and yet here it was, unfolding naturally and beautifully in front of an entire courtroom. Lily giggled softly as Rex shifted closer, allowing her to pat his head. The sound was musical, a tiny voice filled with joy that seemed to echo through the grand, echoing chamber. Every observer felt the moment shift subtly. Adults who had arrived burdened with stress, tension, or mundane concerns found themselves distracted, captivated by the display of innocence and trust. This was more than a child playing with a dog. It was a demonstration of empathy in its purest form, a quiet miracle in the midst of a formal, rigid environment. Sarah watched her daughter, a mixture of pride and wonder washing over her. "Lily, be gentle," she whispered softly, though she knew that her daughter's approach was already as gentle as could be. The handler, Officer Daniels, continued to supervise closely, ready to act if necessary, but his expression had softened. He had trained Rex to follow commands without hesitation, yet the dog's reaction to Lily's unspoken language of trust left him amazed. Every professional instinct told him this was extraordinary. Every adult present realized that they were witnessing something rare, something that would linger in their memories for years. Rex nudged Lily's hand again, this time pressing his nose more firmly against her tiny palm, a gesture of reassurance. Lily squealed softly in delight, clapping her hands together before extending them again to stroke the dog's sleek coat. The contrast was striking. A 3-year-old, small and fragile, interacting with a creature trained to react to danger, yet responding with calm, measured trust. The room was filled with a sense of awe, as if everyone recognized the significance of the moment. It was a reminder that innocence could disarm even the most disciplined beings. The whispers in the courtroom grew slightly louder, yet remained respectful. Spectators exchanged amazed glances, commenting quietly on how remarkable it was that a child could interact with a police dog without hesitation or fear. "Look at him," one person whispered. "He's completely calm. That's incredible." Another nodded, adding, She's something special." The judge, observing from the bench, allowed himself a rare, gentle smile. In his decades of presiding over legal matters, he had never seen an interaction quite like this, and it left him momentarily awed. As Lily continued to pat Rex and speak softly, she began to ask him questions as if expecting answers. "Are you happy today?" she asked, tilting her head. The dog tilted his own head in response, ears flicking as if listening intently. While he could not speak in words, his body language was expressive enough to convey comfort and engagement. The audience realized that Lily's words, though simple, carried profound meaning. She had created a space where trust and communication transcended human language, where understanding flowed effortlessly between species. Officer Daniels finally crouched slightly to Lily's level, carefully observing her interactions. "He's a good boy," he murmured to her. "But remember to be gentle." Lily nodded, absorbing the words but continuing to communicate in her own way. Every gesture, every soft word drew Rex closer, reinforcing the unusual bond forming in the room. It was a delicate dance of empathy, trust, and courage that required no training, no command, only the instinctive connection between a child and an animal. The courtroom had transformed from a space of formal proceedings into a stage for something entirely human, the pure, unguarded expression of kindness. Lawyers, spectators, and court staff alike found themselves captivated, their attention diverted from legal arguments to this extraordinary moment of innocence. For a few precious minutes, the weight of the day, the stress of ongoing cases, and the rigidity of protocol faded away, replaced by a sense of warmth and awe. It was clear that Lily and Rex had created something magical, an interaction that transcended the ordinary and touched everyone present on a deep, emotional level. Finally, Lily leaned closer, brushing her face near Rex's muzzle, and whispered, "You're my friend." The room went silent again, the impact of her words resonating far beyond their simplicity. Rex responded by resting his head gently against her small hand, a gesture of acceptance and trust. The audience exhaled collectively, many with tears glistening in their eyes. It was a moment that defied explanation, a testament to the power of innocence and empathy, and an unforgettable chapter in the lives of everyone in that courtroom. The first encounter had officially been broken, not by command or authority, but by the courage and sincerity of a small child. Lily's actions had captured the attention of a professional K-9. Her words had calmed a disciplined dog, and her presence had brought a courtroom full of adults to quiet awe. In the days to come, many would speak of this moment as miraculous. The bond formed in that first encounter laid the foundation for deeper interactions, ones that would soon astonish everyone even more profoundly. And as Lily straightened, smiling up at Rex, it was clear that this was only the beginning. The courtroom seemed to hum with quiet anticipation. Every eye was on the small girl, and the massive dog, as if the usual gravity of legal proceedings had given way to a moment far more profound. Lily crouched slightly, bringing herself to Rex's level, her tiny hands resting lightly on his soft fur. The dog, alert yet calm, shifted his head to meet her gaze. For those watching, it was as though the room itself had paused, holding its breath, witnessing something extraordinary that transcended the mundane concerns of law, paperwork, and schedules. "Hi, Rex," Lily whispered again, her voice soft and melodic. "You're a good dog, aren't you?" Her words were simple, but they carried a level of sincerity and warmth that resonated in a space designed for authority, discipline, and protocol. The dog responded by lowering his head slightly, eyes gentle, ears flicking in quiet attention. He nudged Lily's hand with his nose, a small gesture that sent a ripple of amazement through the audience. Even the judge, who had seen countless unusual events in his career, allowed himself a faint smile. This wasn't a courtroom performance or a stage display. It was real, raw, and beautiful. Sarah, Lily's mother, watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and amazement. She had always known her child possessed a natural curiosity and a fearless heart, but she had never imagined it could produce a moment so extraordinary. "Be gentle, honey," she whispered, though Lily's touch was already as soft as a feather. The hand extended to Rex, stroking along his sleek black and tan coat, was delicate, careful, yet full of a natural confidence. It was the kind of touch that could calm, soothe, and communicate trust, without a single word beyond the soft whispers of a toddler. The spectators leaned forward slightly in their seats, some whispering quietly to each other. "Look at him," one visitor murmured. "He's completely relaxed. That's incredible." Another nodded, adding, "I've never seen a dog respond like that to a child." Even the attorneys paused in their work, papers set aside, pens resting on legal pads as they watched a connection unfold that they could neither command nor control. The courtroom, usually a place of rigid order and procedure, had transformed into a stage for innocence, empathy, and mutual understanding. Lily tilted her head, gazing up at Rex's intelligent eyes. "You're safe here," she whispered, her words carrying more authority than anyone might expect from a 3-year-old. "You don't have to be scared." The dog responded almost immediately, leaning closer and nudging her gently with his nose. It was a simple gesture, yet profound, an acknowledgement of trust and a reciprocal acceptance of friendship. The audience, silently observing, felt the emotional weight of the moment. It wasn't just a child interacting with a dog. It was a demonstration of the innate ability of humans to connect with animals through empathy and sincerity. Officer Daniels, kneeling slightly to observe more closely, allowed a small slack in Rex's leash. He had trained the dog for years, emphasizing discipline, control, and immediate responsiveness to commands. But here, training seemed secondary. Rex's behavior was governed not by instruction, but by instinct and the quiet sincerity of a tiny human. The handler's professional admiration for both dog and child grew with every gentle nudge, every soft word exchanged. What was unfolding was extraordinary, a reminder that even the most disciplined beings could respond to kindness, trust, and pure intent. The judge, observing from his elevated bench, allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He had presided over countless cases, witnessed disputes, reconciliation, arguments, and apologies. Yet never had he seen something so simple, yet so powerful as a child connecting with a trained police dog in the midst of legal proceedings. It was a moment that transcended the usual confines of the courtroom. reminding everyone present that sometimes the most profound lessons came not from rulings, debates, or legal precedents, but from unfiltered human emotion and instinctive connection. Lily giggled softly as Rex nudged her hand once again. "You're so soft," she whispered, gently running her fingers along his back. The dog responded by lowering himself slightly, bringing his head closer to her small hands. It was a display of trust, an acknowledgement that Lily posed no threat, and that in some unspoken way the two had formed a bond. The spectators, now fully invested, watched in quiet awe. Some had tears glistening in their eyes, others simply shook their heads in amazement. It was a moment of universal recognition. Innocence had bridged the gap between human and animal in a space defined by rules and authority. Sarah observed quietly from her seat, marveling at the scene. She realized that her daughter had done something no adult in that room could replicate. She had reached across the boundaries of training, discipline, and societal expectation to touch the heart of a creature conditioned to obey commands rather than emotions. The simplicity of Lily's gestures, the honesty in her voice, and the trust inherent in her tiny frame had created something extraordinary. She had reminded everyone present that empathy was a universal language, understood not through words or logic, but through actions, attention, and presence. The spectators whispered among themselves in awe, some capturing the moment discreetly on their phones. Every gesture Lily made seemed to elicit a gentle response from Rex, a tilt of the head, a soft nudge, a gentle press of his nose. It was as if the dog were carefully studying her, weighing her intentions, and responding with the grace and patience of a creature who understood the weight of trust. And Lily, in turn, responded to every subtle cue with delight and care, her laughter light and unforced, a pure expression of joy that resonated through the entire room. Finally, Lily leaned slightly closer, resting her small hand gently on Rex's muzzle. "I like you," she whispered, her words simple yet profound. The dog, in response, rested his head lightly against her hand, a gesture of trust and acceptance that left the entire courtroom silent. Even the judge allowed a faint smile to grace his features. Lawyers, clerks, and spectators alike felt the depth of the connection, recognizing it as something rare and magical. It was not a moment that could be replicated, only witnessed and cherished. This first real connection between child and dog marked a turning point. The initial curiosity had transformed into something far deeper: trust, understanding, and mutual respect. Rex, the disciplined K9 trained to respond to threats, had chosen to engage with Lily on his own terms, guided by instinct and the sincerity of a child's touch. Lily, in turn, had discovered a friend in a creature as disciplined and powerful as he was gentle and responsive. The courtroom, now fully invested in the unfolding interaction, seemed to recognize the significance. It was a rare convergence of innocence, bravery, and empathy, a lesson in connection that transcended language, species, and circumstance. As the session continued around them, the energy of the room had shifted permanently. A courthouse that had been filled with tension, whispers of disputes, and quiet anxiety now carried a subtle warmth, a sense of awe and admiration. The tiniest person in the room had captured the attention of a professional K9, and in doing so, reminded every adult present of the beauty of courage, empathy, and unguarded innocence. The moment was fleeting yet eternal, leaving an indelible impression on the hearts of all who witnessed it. The courthouse had fallen into a rare, almost sacred silence. Lily, the 3-year-old girl whose presence had initially gone unnoticed among the formalities of the courtroom, now held the attention of everyone present. Her small hand rested gently on Rex's broad muzzle, while her wide, curious eyes locked with the dog's intelligent gaze. It was as if the room itself had recognized the significance of the moment, pausing to witness the extraordinary connection unfolding between child and animal. Lawyers stopped shuffling papers, clerks ceased their typing, even the murmur of spectators died away, replaced by quiet, awed attention. The judge, typically stoic and reserved, leaned forward slightly on his bench. He watched as Lily's tiny fingers traced the sleek lines of Rex's fur. There was no command, no verbal cue to force the interaction, only trust and instinct. The dog, trained to respond to threats in an instant, had willingly chosen to engage with this small human. Tail wagging gently, ears perked in careful attention, Rex allowed her to explore, to touch, and to speak to him as if he understood every word. For the adults present, it was a lesson in humility, a reminder that power and discipline, while impressive, could be softened by innocence and empathy. Spectators whispered quietly among themselves, trying not to break the spell. "Look at her," one whispered. "She's only 3 and he's completely calm." Another nodded, her eyes wide. "It's like he understands her. I've never seen anything like it." Phones were discreetly lifted, capturing videos and photos, but even the act of recording seemed secondary to the shared experience of watching the bond form. Everyone sensed that they were witnessing something unique, a moment that could not be recreated or repeated, only observed and remembered. Lily giggled softly as Rex nudged her hand, a gentle affirmation that he had accepted her friendship. "See, Mommy," she whispered, her voice filled with triumph and delight. "He likes me." Sarah smiled quietly, holding back tears as she observed the scene. She had known her daughter was brave and kind, but she had not anticipated the way her innocence could calm a professional K-9 in a busy courtroom. Officer Daniels, kneeling near Rex, allowed himself a small, amazed smile. He had trained the dog for years, instilling discipline and precision, yet here was a moment that no amount of training could have produced, an unspoken connection between child and dog. The judge, watching closely, allowed the moment to linger. Legal proceedings could wait. Nothing in that moment was more important than the display of trust and empathy unfolding before him. Even the lawyers, who had been preparing arguments and reviewing evidence just moments ago, paused and exchanged quiet glances of amazement. They, too, recognized the extraordinary nature of the encounter. This was not merely a child interacting with a dog. It was a demonstration of courage, patience, and connection in its purest form. Rex's behavior continued to astonish everyone. The dog leaned slightly closer to Lily, lowering his massive head so that her small hands could rest comfortably on his neck. He exuded calm and patience, responding to her presence with subtle gestures that conveyed recognition and acceptance. Lily, in turn, spoke softly to him, whispering phrases of reassurance and delight. "You're such a good boy," she said, her voice carrying warmth and sincerity. "I like you, Rex." The dog responded with gentle nudges and soft whines of acknowledgement, completing a silent conversation understood by all present. The audience, completely captivated, found themselves emotionally swept up in the moment. Eyes that had been accustomed to courtroom tension softened. Adults who had arrived burdened with stress, deadlines, and disputes suddenly found themselves smiling, quietly tearing up, or simply shaking their heads in disbelief. It was impossible not to be affected by the purity of the interaction. A 3-year-old had drawn the attention of a professional police dog, and in doing so, had reminded everyone present of the power of empathy and innocence. Sarah's pride in her daughter was evident, but it was mixed with awe. She realized that Lily had achieved something extraordinary. She had bridged a gap that most adults would never attempt. She had connected with a creature trained to detect danger, to respond instantly to threats, and to obey commands without question. And yet, Rex had allowed himself to be guided not by instruction, but by trust, responding with calm and gentle attention. It was a rare and profound moment, one that would leave a lasting impression on everyone in that room. Whispers continued to ripple through the audience. "He's never been this calm around anyone," one spectator said quietly. "Not even the other officers." Another nodded. "She's special. There's something about her." The words reflected a growing recognition. Lily's courage, her gentle touch, and her genuine care had created a connection that transcended age, experience, and authority. The entire courtroom was united in admiration, silently acknowledging that this small child had achieved something remarkable. Lily, sensing the attention but unconcerned by it, continued her gentle interaction. She leaned closer, resting her forehead lightly against Rex's massive head. The dog, in response, nudged her softly, almost as if reciprocating the gesture of affection. For a brief moment, the boundaries between human and animal dissolved, leaving only a shared understanding, trust, safety, and friendship. The courtroom, usually a place of rules and order, had been transformed into a space of emotional connection, where even the most disciplined beings could respond to genuine kindness. Officer Daniels finally spoke quietly, not wanting to disturb the moment. "He's a good boy, Lily, but always remember to be gentle." Lily nodded earnestly, her small hand still resting on Rex. "I am gentle," she replied softly. Her words, simple and sincere, underscored the authenticity of the moment. Rex, as if understanding her reassurance, lowered his head further, allowing her to rest her hands freely on his fur. The courtroom, watching this silent exchange, felt a collective sense of awe. It was a rare demonstration of innocence, empathy, and mutual understanding that few would forget. The judge leaned back slightly in his chair, reflecting on the extraordinary scene. He had witnessed countless cases, disputes, and reconciliations in his career, but rarely, if ever, had he seen such a simple yet powerful display of connection. The 3-year-old had achieved what no amount of authority or experience could. She had captured the attention and trust of a professional police dog, reminding every adult present that power, discipline, and authority could be softened and transformed by innocence and empathy. As the first encounter continued to unfold, spectators whispered to each other, quietly marveling at the rare phenomenon. Lawyers, clerks, and even security officers found themselves drawn into the emotional impact, witnessing firsthand the extraordinary power of kindness and courage. Lily, oblivious to the profound effect she was having, continued to speak softly to Rex, her small hands patting his fur gently. The dog responded in kind, his calm demeanor and gentle nudges conveying recognition and trust. For those present, it became clear that this moment was about more than a child playing with a dog. It was a demonstration of connection, courage, and understanding that transcended age, authority, and expectation. Lily had shown that innocence and empathy could bridge gaps, soften hearts, and create a moment of awe in even the most formal, disciplined environment. The courtroom, now fully immersed in the unfolding scene, remained silent, captivated, and transformed by the presence of a child whose courage and kindness touched everyone present. The courtroom had returned to its usual rhythm, with lawyers quietly shuffling papers and the judge preparing to resume proceedings, but the atmosphere remained profoundly changed. What had occurred moments ago, the gentle, fearless interaction between 3-year-old Lily and the professional police dog, Rex, was no ordinary event. It had left every adult present reflecting on the unexpected power of innocence and empathy. For once, the rigid lines of authority, the weight of formal procedures, and the seriousness of legal matters had been softened by a tiny hand, a soft voice, and a heart full of courage. Sarah, Lily's mother, sat quietly, marveling at the depth of her daughter's impact. She had known her child possessed a natural curiosity and kindness, but seeing the effects firsthand was astonishing. Lily had not only engaged with Rex, a dog trained for years to obey commands and assess threats, but she had also captivated a room full of adults. Judges, lawyers, clerks, and spectators alike had been drawn into the unfolding moment, held spellbound by the unspoken bond between child and canine. Sarah realized that her daughter's innocence had transcended the physical presence of the dog, touching the hearts of all those who bore witness. Officer Daniels knelt beside Rex, observing his partner carefully. The dog, usually so disciplined and precise in following commands, had chosen to engage with Lily in a way that no training could account for. His calm demeanor and gentle nudges reflected a level of trust and understanding that was rare for a canine in a bustling, formal environment. The handler quietly admitted to himself that what had just occurred was extraordinary. He had trained Rex for thousands of hours, yet here was a child, acting purely from instinct and heart, accomplishing what no handler could, establishing a bond built entirely on trust. The judge, reflecting from his elevated bench, allowed himself a moment of quiet introspection. Courtrooms were typically arenas of conflict, resolution, and rule-following, yet this day had become something different, a place where a child's purity had brought warmth, calm, and even awe. He realized that adults, no matter their experience or authority, could learn from such simplicity. Innocence, patience, and genuine care had far-reaching power. In a few minutes, a child had transformed not only the mood of the room, but also the emotional state of every observer, leaving a lesson that could not be captured in law books or lectures. Lawyers and clerks exchanged quiet whispers, reflecting on the unusual scene. "She's remarkable," one said, shaking her head slightly. "To think a child could do that to a police dog and to the courtroom itself." Another replied softly, "It's a reminder of how simple kindness can move mountains, or at least calm the most disciplined beings." Even the spectators, many of whom had arrived anxious or preoccupied with their own matters, found themselves contemplating the lesson. They had witnessed the undeniable truth. Innocence and empathy could create connection where authority alone could not. Lily, unaware of the depth of her influence, continued to interact with Rex in the quiet moments after the initial encounter. She spoke softly, her voice carrying warmth and reassurance. "You're my friend now," she whispered, smiling as Rex nudged her gently in response. The dog's calm response mirrored the trust she had offered, and together they created a silent conversation of mutual understanding. Each gesture, each subtle movement, communicated something profound. That kindness and trust were forces capable of bridging gaps, even between species, age, and experience. Sarah reflected on the broader meaning of the day. Her daughter had reminded everyone that life's lessons were often found in the smallest, most unexpected moments. A courtroom designed for structure, logic, and procedure had become a space for reflection, empathy, and wonder, all because of a child's fearless interaction with a dog. Sarah realized that her daughter's example was not just remarkable in a personal sense, it was a teaching moment for every adult present. It showed that empathy, patience, and genuine care could transform not just relationships, but entire environments. Officer Daniels finally spoke aloud, his voice carrying quiet admiration. "Rex has never responded like this before. I've trained him for years, but nothing prepared me for this. Lily, she's amazing." The judge and courtroom staff nodded silently. Even in the formal world of law and procedure, they recognized the truth in his statement. The day had become more than a court case or routine proceedings. It had become a testament to the unexpected lessons that life, in its purest moments, could offer. As the session continued, people began to reflect on the power of trust. Rex, a creature trained to obey commands and respond to threats, had been guided by something deeper, innocence and sincerity. Lily's tiny hands and soft words had communicated in a language older and more profound than law, the language of connection. Spectators began to discuss quietly how rare such moments were. "She didn't ask permission. She just acted with love," one whispered. "And look how he responded." "It's incredible," replied another. The lesson was undeniable. Authenticity and courage, even from the smallest among us, could move hearts in ways the strongest rules could not. Lily, oblivious to the weight of her impact, continued to pat Rex gently, whispering words of reassurance. "It's okay," she said. "You're safe here." The dog leaned slightly into her touch, a subtle but unmistakable sign of trust. Every observer felt the gravity of the moment, realizing that what they were witnessing was extraordinary. This was more than a child playing with a dog. It was a demonstration of the transformative power of empathy and courage, a vivid reminder that even the smallest gestures could have profound consequences. The courtroom, once tense with anticipation and the routine weight of legal matters, had been transformed into a space of reflection. Adults recognized that lessons could come in the most unexpected forms, through a child, through a dog, through the quiet moments of connection that often went unnoticed in daily life. They understood in that moment that courage and kindness were universal forces. Lily had taught them that day what no book, lecture, or courtroom procedure could: that empathy, patience, and sincerity could break barriers, bridge gaps, and leave an indelible mark on hearts. As proceedings resumed, the atmosphere remained permanently altered. The memory of the interaction between Lily and Rex lingered like a warm glow, reminding everyone that life's simplest acts of kindness often held the deepest power. Lawyers, clerks, and spectators carried the memory with them, reflecting quietly on the profound lesson imparted by a 3-year-old girl and a disciplined police dog. Lily's courage, innocence, and ability to connect left a legacy far beyond the courtroom walls, one that would inspire empathy, trust, and understanding for years to come. Even after the session officially ended, people discussed the encounter in hushed tones, sharing stories of how a tiny child had captured the attention of a highly trained K-9 and an entire courtroom. Social media later carried videos of the interaction, and the story became a symbol of hope, courage, and the power of genuine connection. Lily's simple acts, a gentle touch, a soft word, and fearless curiosity had reminded adults of the beauty of empathy. And Rex, the professional police dog, had shown that even the most disciplined beings could respond to love, trust, and innocence in their purest form. The courtroom had long since returned to its official duties, but the echoes of the extraordinary interaction between Lily and Rex lingered like an invisible current, flowing through every corner of the room. Staff, lawyers, and spectators could not shake the image of a tiny 3-year-old, fearless and gentle, connecting with a professional K-9 in a way that defied explanation. It was as if the weight of legal procedure had been momentarily suspended, replaced by awe, wonder, and admiration. Word of Lily's remarkable courage began to spread immediately. The judge, who had witnessed the scene firsthand, quietly instructed the court clerk to make a note in the day's official record, not as a case outcome, but as a testament to the power of innocence and empathy. "We must acknowledge the extraordinary," he murmured to himself, a rare warmth breaking through his usual stern demeanor. Lawyers who had initially arrived preoccupied with case arguments now lingered, quietly praising the child's bravery and the dog's calm response. The interaction had left a permanent imprint on everyone present. Sarah observed her daughter with quiet pride, yet she remained mindful of the fact that Lily's courage was instinctive, not performative. The girl had approached Rex not to impress anyone but simply out of curiosity, kindness, and fearlessness. "You were amazing, Lily," Sarah whispered softly, brushing her daughter's hair from her forehead. Lily looked up with wide, innocent eyes, nodding seriously, still processing the magnitude of her own actions. She had made a friend that day, a friend who understood her, and in doing so, she had touched the hearts of countless others. Officer Daniels, kneeling near Rex, allowed himself a small smile of genuine admiration. He had spent years training the dog for countless scenarios: drug detection, security operations, and high-stress public situations. Yet nothing had prepared him for what had transpired that day. "He's never responded like this before," Daniels said quietly to Sarah, his voice filled with awe. "Not even to me. Not to other officers, but Lily, she reached him in a way only a child could." Rex, standing calmly beside him, seemed to echo the sentiment with a gentle wag of his tail, as if sharing in the recognition. The audience that had witnessed the interaction did not leave immediately. Many remained seated, quietly reflecting on the extraordinary moment. Spectators exchanged glances, whispering about how a child could inspire such calm and trust in a professional K-9. Some speculated that it was Lily's innocence, her lack of fear, and her genuine kindness that allowed the dog to respond so openly. Others simply shook their heads in wonder, unsure how to explain the scene but instinctively recognizing its significance. It was rare, they realized, to witness such a profound connection between human and animal, and even rarer to see it in a place defined by law, authority, and order. The judge called the room to order once more, but the atmosphere remained changed. Lawyers quietly returned to their desks, clerks resumed their tasks, and the judge prepared to continue with the day's cases. Yet, everyone carried with them a shared understanding. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a demonstration of courage, empathy, and trust that transcended normal experience. It was not just a fleeting moment of charm or novelty. It was a lesson, subtle yet profound, in the value of innocence and the power of gentle connection. News of Lily's bravery spread quickly beyond the courthouse walls. Within hours, videos of the interaction circulated on social media, capturing the hearts of people nationwide. Headlines praised the courage of the 3-year-old girl who had spoken to a police dog in a courtroom and left everyone in awe. Local news stations sought interviews with Sarah, curious about the child who had captured so much attention, while viewers marveled at how a simple act of kindness could inspire and move people across the country. Lily's story became a symbol of hope, reminding adults of the simplicity and power of trust, empathy, and courage. In the days following the event, Officer Daniels and the police department publicly recognized Lily's extraordinary interaction with Rex. A small ceremony was organized at the precinct, where Lily was awarded a certificate of appreciation, celebrating her bravery and her ability to connect with Rex in a unique and inspiring way. Photographs were taken, hands were shaken, and Lily, wide-eyed and smiling, accepted the recognition with the innocence of a child who did not yet fully comprehend the magnitude of her own courage. Rex, calm and obedient, sat faithfully beside her, the bond between them evident to all who observed. The event left a lasting impression not only on the public, but also on the officers who worked with Rex. They realized that while discipline, training, and experience were essential, there existed another element, empathy, that could foster deeper connections. Lily's actions had revealed something extraordinary, that courage and kindness, even from the smallest and youngest among us, could break barriers and touch hearts in ways authority alone could not. For the officers, it was a lesson they would carry into every encounter, a reminder of the human-animal bond's profound potential. Sarah, reflecting on the whirlwind of attention and admiration surrounding her daughter, felt a deep sense of gratitude. She realized that the moment had not only changed those present in the courtroom, but had touched countless others across the country. The courage and kindness of a tiny child had inspired adults to reflect, to reconsider their assumptions, and to acknowledge the power of empathy and innocence. It was a reminder that the simplest gestures, gentle words, a soft touch, and fearless curiosity could create ripples of change far beyond the immediate moment. In the following weeks, the story continued to be shared widely, becoming a teaching tool in schools, police departments, and community organizations. Educators highlighted Lily's courage as an example of empathy and kindness, while law enforcement professionals emphasized the importance of connection and trust with both humans and animals. The narrative resonated with people across generations, cultures, and professions, demonstrating that even the smallest individuals could inspire profound change. Through it all, Lily remained blissfully unaware of the scale of her influence. For her, Rex was a friend, a gentle, loyal, and understanding companion who responded to her curiosity and kindness. She continued to visit the police station, often bringing small treats for Rex and spending time learning about the dog's work. Each interaction reinforced their bond, providing a foundation of trust that would last for years. The adults around them, however, could not stop marveling at the courage and sincerity of a child, whose actions had sparked admiration, reflection, and even hope in a world often burdened by rules and complexities. By the end of the month, the story of Lily and Rex had become more than a local sensation. It was a narrative about the extraordinary power of innocence, empathy, and courage. People spoke of it not as a novelty, but as a reminder that genuine connection could transcend boundaries, calm even the most disciplined creatures, and inspire adults to remember the value of kindness. Lily's simple actions, a small hand, a gentle word, a fearless heart, had become a beacon of hope, illustrating the profound impact that empathy, trust, and courage could have in the world. The courtroom, once filled with tension and formal procedure, remained forever transformed in memory. Those who had witnessed the encounter carried with them a quiet reverence for the young girl who had captured the heart of a professional K-9 and inspired a room full of adults. For the public, for the officers, for the judge, and for Lily herself, the story became a reminder of life's most essential truth: the courage to approach with kindness, the bravery to connect without fear, and the sincerity of a pure heart could leave a lasting impression far greater than any authority or instruction ever could. Weeks had passed since the extraordinary day in the courtroom, yet the memory of Lily and Rex's interaction remained vivid in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. The story had spread beyond local news, capturing hearts nationwide. Social media was filled with clips of the gentle 3-year-old and the disciplined police dog, alongside heartfelt commentary on courage, empathy, and the innocence that had transformed a courtroom. Lily, oblivious to her growing fame, continued to live her life with the simplicity and purity that had inspired so many. Sarah, her mother, watched with quiet amazement as her daughter interacted with Rex in the police station's small training yard. The bond between them had only strengthened. Lily spoke softly, patting the dog's fur and laughing as he nudged her gently in return. It was a friendship built on trust, patience, and a shared understanding that transcended words. For Sarah, it was a lesson in how powerful innocence could be. "You don't just make friends, Lily," she whispered. "You change hearts." Lily, giggling, responded with a simple hug for Rex, unaware of the truth in her mother's words. Officer Daniels, who had trained Rex for years, reflected on the lessons he had learned from the child. He had taught Rex to follow commands, detect threats, and respond with discipline under pressure. Yet no amount of training had prepared him for the way Lily's presence could calm the dog, evoke trust, and foster connection. "She's remarkable," Daniels said quietly during a briefing with fellow officers. "Not just for Rex, but for all of us. She reminded us that kindness and courage are more powerful than authority alone." The officers nodded, acknowledging the truth of his words. The courthouse, too, felt the echoes of that day. Judge Thompson, often reserved and formal, had quietly asked the clerks to keep a note in the court records about the extraordinary event, not for legal reasons, but as a recognition of the rare, inspiring moment. "It's a reminder," the judge said softly to himself, "that even in a world built on rules, we must never forget the value of empathy and innocence." Colleagues who had witnessed the scene reflected on the profound effect a child had had on the entire room, reshaping the energy and leaving a lasting impression that formal proceedings alone could never create. Communities across the country began celebrating the story of Lily and Rex. Schools invited Sarah and her daughter to share the experience with young students, emphasizing lessons about kindness, courage, and respect for animals. Children listened intently, captivated by the tale of a little girl who had fearlessly approached a highly trained police dog and inspired an entire courtroom. Educators highlighted the importance of empathy, showing that even small acts of courage could resonate far beyond the immediate moment, touching the lives of countless others. Media coverage expanded, telling the story not as a novelty, but as a message of hope. Headlines praised Lily's bravery, her gentle heart, and her unique ability to form connections. Psychologists, animal trainers, and educators analyzed the interaction, emphasizing the extraordinary nature of the bond she had forged with Rex. Articles discussed the science of trust and the human-animal connection, but all acknowledged the undeniable truth. A child's innocence, curiosity, and courage had created something beautiful and transformative, something that no structured lesson could replicate. Lily's interactions with Rex continued to evolve. She learned about the dog's duties, how he helped keep the community safe, and the discipline required for his work. Yet, despite his training and authority, Rex always responded to her with gentleness and trust. Their friendship became a source of inspiration not only for the officers and staff at the station, but also for the public. Families, educators, and officials began to emphasize that courage and empathy were lessons to be taught and nurtured from the earliest age, inspired by the example set by Lily. One day, during a small ceremony at the precinct, the police department formally recognized Lily for her extraordinary display of bravery and kindness. Officer Daniels presented her with a certificate, commemorating the day she connected with Rex and inspired an entire courtroom. Lily beamed, clapping her tiny hands with delight as Rex sat faithfully by her side. Photographs were taken, capturing the enduring bond between child and dog. The moment symbolized more than recognition. It celebrated the power of innocence, trust, and courage to inspire a community, a city, and even a nation. Even in quiet, private moments, the significance of that day lingered. Sarah noticed how other children and adults who visited the precinct were subtly influenced by Lily's behavior. People approached Rex gently, spoke softly, and displayed patience and kindness. Lily, without realizing it, had created a ripple effect, teaching others by example. The courthouse, the police station, and the community had all been transformed by the courage and empathy of a 3-year-old girl, proving that true influence often comes not from power or authority, but from sincerity and heart. As time went on, the story became a symbol, a reminder of what humanity could achieve when approached with kindness and fearlessness. Schools, community centers, and media outlets continued to share the tale, emphasizing the lessons embedded in every interaction. That trust could be earned without force, that courage was not limited by size or age, and that the simplest acts of kindness could inspire even the most disciplined hearts. Rex remained a loyal companion, embodying the calm and trust that Lily had awakened within him. Years later, when people looked back on that day in the courthouse, it was remembered not for legal rulings or formal outcomes, but for the extraordinary bond that had formed between a tiny girl and a police dog. The story inspired books, articles, and discussions on empathy, courage, and human-animal relationships. Lily's courage and kindness became a teaching tool for generations, demonstrating that even the smallest among us could leave an indelible mark on the world. In the end, the legacy of that extraordinary moment was clear. Lily's innocence and bravery had shown that true power lay not in discipline or authority, but in trust, empathy, and courage. Rex had responded not to commands but to the sincerity of a child's heart, and the courtroom, the police station, and the community had been forever changed, reminded of the extraordinary lessons that could be found in the simplest of interactions. The story concluded not with applause or fanfare, but with lasting inspiration, a quiet, enduring testament to the power of courage, kindness, and human connection.